Okay. Anyways, so again, glad to have you all here. Dzień dobry, dobry wieczór. Uh, as I mentioned before, we are an organization that helps anybody who has Polish roots, whatever they were basically. Yeah. So we are talking about not just Poland in the shape as we know Poland today, but also the former areas of Lithuania, Belarus, Ukraine. These are all the regions and all the research specifics that we cover in our daily work. Apart from genealogical research, we every single day we are working on a different services as well. So we search the records for you. We're trying to uncover your family history connected with your Polish ancestry. We also organize Polish roots tours. We are doing graphical trees. But again, apart from all that, we are also focusing on research and Polish surname origin. We're trying to answer the question on the history of your surname as well. So, so I know this is a lot. This is all very interesting. But today, together with Michał Petrus, we will focus on Polish citizenship. And this is, I know, this is something that will be the most. This is something that will be the most interesting for you today. So, after this very short introducing. I am leaving you with Michał Petrus. He is a specialist he's a specialist in subject of Polish citizenship, the procedures and the subject of applying and getting Polish citizenship in our organization. So I am sure he will explain the subject for you very in a lot of detail. So I think, Michał, you can start now.
Okay, thank you, Kinga. So again, hello everybody. Now I believe I'm moving. So it's great to have you all here. I will allow myself to play you the presentation that I have prepared. So that's that. So today we'll be dealing with Polish citizenship by descent, which is one of 3 methods of confirming citizenship. The other 2 are residency and presidential grant. But Polish citizenship by descent, I would say, is by far the easiest, of course, when you have the Polish ancestry, because otherwise you would be either required to reside in the country and know the language, or present a very good application to the president and wait about 2 years in current conditions for that to be reviewed. So let's get right to it. The procedure is quite big, so we have divided it into 6 parts, 6 stages. The first one is the eligibility check. The second one is securing proof of Polish citizenship, so presenting the documents proving that your ancestors were Polish. The third one is requirements as what is needed to be placed to the authorities from your side, so documents coming from the country that your ancestors emigrated to. The fourth one is just applying, so putting forward the application to the government. Then there is a waiting time connected to the review that is being conducted by the government, and finally having all the documents needed for the passport. Don't worry if I just glossed over every one of them, because we'll be getting in detail on each and every one of those. I just wanted to provide a general scope. And of course, you can move forward with that on your own. You can choose a legal representative that will act on your behalf. Here we will provide you with some knowledge and also information as to what would we do as your potential representatives, but the general knowledge is basically the same. So starting from eligibility check, basically it means that you are to inherit the citizenship from your ancestors, and as such they inherited it from their ancestors. But we also have to check whether there are no conditions under which they lost it, because there were a set of citizenship laws during 20th century and also presently that defined what are the conditions of keeping and losing citizenship, and also practices of the offices and judicial decisions made by the courts of law, so basically interpretations of said laws. The most important laws are the one of 1920 and the one of 1951. So starting from 1920, it is the first one and also the most complicated one. So it was introduced in January of 1920, and it basically gave the citizenship to all inhabitants of Polish territory. That means former Russian, German, and Austrian territories, because Poland regained independence after First World War in 1918. And as you can see, it took 2 more years for the citizenship to be introduced to Poland, to Polish people. So it granted citizenship regardless of faith or nationality or anything like that. It granted citizenship to all inhabitants of Polish territory. And as the Second Polish Republic grew, because there were some territorial gains after that date, it also granted citizenship to inhabitants of that land as well. For Polish people that were already abroad because they were working, for example, in France or United States, they had to report to the consul. So they did not live at the time in Poland for them to be granted with the citizenship. So they had to report to the consul and report their willingness to adopt the citizenship that was granted to all inhabitants of Polish lands. So for ancestry, for family histories that predate that date, so the family immigrated or emigrated during First World War or even before that, this is the main proof that you would need to have, that your family reported to the consul, and you need some paperwork evidence at best to prove that they in fact did that. So without that, the chances, quite frankly, are slim, because as I mentioned, the law itself stated that citizenship is foremost granted to inhabitants of Polish territory. The law was also unequal in that sense that women had worse than males, as it usually was back then, and citizenship of women depended on their husbands from the moment of marriage. So even Polish women, if they had their own citizenship, they could lose it with marriage. So if they married non-Polish citizen, they could have obtained citizenship of their husband and lose Polish citizenship in the process. If they married Polish citizen, it is most important to prove citizenship of said husband and not herself. Also, service in the non-Polish army caused loss of citizenship. So Poland did not allow for her citizens to serve in other armies, but there are some notable exceptions that I will describe later on. Just to speak in general facts, it is related to Allied service during Second World War. Naturalization also sometimes caused loss of citizenship, and again, mostly for women, sadly, because men were mostly exempt from that rule, since they were still eligible to be drafted to the Polish army. Even in theory, even if they already lived abroad, in eyes of the Polish government, they were eligible to be drafted. So in eyes of the Polish government, they also could not lose citizenship due to denaturalization. As women were not eligible to be drafted to the Polish army, naturalization most often caused loss of citizenship for them. And lastly, this is something quite special in a negative sense, that is keeping eye on the practices of the provincial office or the government general, because they sometimes quote several paragraphs from older laws, but with new interpretation. And this is something that we have experienced in about, I would say, starting from last year, that focusing on public sector jobs, so working for the government, for holding public office, also could cause loss of citizenship. So in our minds, it would be a politician or a minister in the government or policeman, but also for the provincial office, it sometimes is being a doctor in state hospital or teacher in state school, because in their eyes, having those jobs would mean that your ancestors represented in some way the foreign power. But this is something that is definitely worth checking first. So please do not despair if your ancestor held that job, because we can still get to the bottom of the interpretation, whether it really meant public office or not. And that's the law of 1920. It became in force until 1951. The next slide, really. So it came in force on 19th of January 1951 and was much more liberal. Basically, more space for female lineages, because women held their own citizenship on their own right, no longer in connection to their husbands or father or any male figure. They had their own citizenship. And also the naturalization, holding dual citizenship or adopting new citizenship, no longer also cause loss of citizenship both for them and males. Also, no longer there is a requirement for children to be born in wedlock to inherit citizenship by paternal side, via father. So as you know, mother is always certain, so Polish law has no problem with that. If the citizenship is passed from mother, mother is always certain, that means citizenship can be passed. Regarding father, they most often would require also presenting the marriage certificate or acknowledgement of fatherhood, so to prove that child was acknowledged by father and it was born in wedlock. Moreover, after Second World War, the borders changed a lot. So Poland lost eastern territories and gained Silesia and Pomerania and Gdańsk. So the citizenship was granted to repatriates from the east based on the fact that they settled in Poland. And here we also have something that appears for, I would say, first time, because Second Polish Republic granted citizenship regardless, as I said, of faith or nationality. But communist Poland wanted to purge other faiths and nationalities, so they expelled Germans, Russians, Ukrainians, Belarusians, Lithuanians abroad, and in most cases also stripped them from having Polish citizenship. So there are some cases in which it was preserved, most likely in mixed marriages. You can check that with us as well, to be sure. But with general rule, for example, German living in Łódź or Warsaw before the war and being expelled to East Germany, most likely lost Polish citizenship in the process. Also basing not only on this law or regulations adopted by Polish government, but also by international agreements between Eastern Bloc countries. So as I mentioned, naturalization, but also service in the army and public office jobs no longer cause loss of citizenship. So this is very good law when in terms of liberalization of the regulations, not the expulsions and stripping of citizenship, of course. But if your family emigrated after 1951, most likely you kept the citizenship. But again, please do not despair if that happened earlier, because it doesn't necessarily mean that you have no chance, because each case is different and we are able to analyze it properly and work our way with some exceptions and judicial decrees in the matter. So there were also later laws in 1962 and 2012, but not many changes were made. In 1962, there was reintroduced wedlock requirement for the inheritance of citizenship by paternal lineage. So from 1920 to 1951, and from 1962 up to present, if the citizenship is inherited from father or paternal grandfather and so on, you would need to prove being born in wedlock. And 2012 law introduced adoption as a method of inheriting citizenship very late. My personal opinion is that it should be much earlier than that. Sadly, the law does not go backwards. So only children adopted in lineages overall, adopted after that date, could trace their citizenship in adoptive line, previously sadly only in biological lineages. And as I already started to mention, judicial decisions mostly covered the topic of military service and being forbidden basically by the 1920 laws, but they set up some exceptions, which is very logical, basically because Poland ceased to exist in 1939, the start of Second World War, and many Poles decided to join the Allied forces, and they represented either with Polish corps along all Allied armies, or directly served in French, British, American armies, and so on. And it was soberly decided that this was not a case to strip somebody from Polish citizenship, because they fought the common enemy, the Axis powers. So as long as the army in which your Polish ancestors served had the same goal as Poland had, it's fine, basically. So the two wars that would not be covered by this would be Korean War, because Poland at the time was part of the Eastern Bloc and fought basically on the other side, and Israeli defense wars that had nothing to do with the Poland's goals at the time, also communist Poland. And as I also mentioned, practice of provincial office is still in motion, so it's best to keep track of that, to see by experience, by other cases, how it's changed, how they change their interpretations, how they change, how they are impacted by judicial decisions, and so on. So moving on from eligibility check, which is, I believe, the biggest topic. This is why this we needed a lot of time to discuss it. If we get through this, and the assessment is most of the times, not only with us, but also with other representatives, free of charge, we would move to analyzing the documents. So most important, we need the proof of Polish citizenship. So main documents that proves that our ancestor that emigrated had Polish citizenship. So either resided in pre-war Poland, which was almost automatically meaning that he or she was a citizen, or voting, or being in the army, or something that only citizen could do. And we need the document. There are three questions that describe this document. So first of all, is it original? The Polish government is very strict with that. So it's not like in the West overall. So the statements and affidavits and other confirmations by word that this is in fact true do not have the same power. The government wants to see the document from the past, stating that the fact is indeed true. So if you have the fragile documents, such as old Polish passport, old Polish ID, you can skip that, but only if you have Polish official that would see the document and issue a so-called certified copy. And it is important that certification happens by the Polish official. Polish notary, Polish lawyer, Polish consul, but consul general, not honorary consul, or ambassador, of course. But they have to see the document, because Polish government has a list of Polish lawyers and officials and so on, and they trust them to speak on the truth, and that the certified copy that they made was indeed made on the basis of the original. So if you are sending originals, of course, we will take great care of that original. But if you are not willing to, or the family member is not willing to, you can do with this certified copy. But please remember, it cannot be notarized or certified by other lawyers. So, for example, at your post office or by a notary public in your country, it has to be Polish official. So, who issued it is a very simple question, very simple answer. It has to be issued by the Polish central or regional provincial authorities, and it is marked usually by signature or stamp. Here you can see historic stamp used by the Second Polish Republic. Usually the stamp appears on the documents that you would see. And the third question is, what type of the document is it? And there are several. The most often are population censuses and domicile lists, which prove residency. Pre-war residency basically meant that it equals citizenship. Also, voters lists, military records, passports or applications for passports, even questionnaires, but they are the most rare ones. They are not so common in the archives. If you have them in your own family archives, that's great. That's a real treasure. Also tax property records, but if they are detailed enough. Please note that the consular passports could be additionally verified by the government. The reason is the consuls not always had the full knowledge of the case when they issued Polish consular passport, especially in times of great concerns such as Second World War, let's take, for example, when there was a Polish consul in Portugal residing in Lisbon, and Polish citizen appeared before him or her and asked for the passport to be issued because they are escaping. They are escaping for their lives and they want to emigrate to the United States, but they need legal document to get aboard the ship. So the consul obviously wants to do that, and their basis would be that person is speaking Polish. They do not have any documents because they are escaping. They did not carry anything most of the times. So this is the basis. And in such case, the Polish government would check that basis. If otherwise on the passport, the basis is stated as previous Polish passport, it should be fine. But we are also here to tell you whether the consular passport you have is good to go, or would we need additional documents. And moving on, we need what is needed on your side. So basically non-Polish documents. Most of the times, sadly, we would not assist you directly with getting those. We are able to provide you with our guidance, our knowledge about how to get those, who to contact, but most of the Polish professionals cannot represent you abroad, so in your country. You would need to get some documents to prove all the things that you basically said on the eligibility check stage to us. So as I mentioned, the Polish government needs to see the documents, not affidavits or statements. We are fine with affidavits and statements. If you are saying my grandmother did not naturalize, we believe you, but we need a document for that on later stages. So first of all, we need vital records. And please make sure to order long forms, especially from the US. Here we have the birth certificate from the state of California. The reason why you ought to order a long form is that it has an exact city or town of birth and not the county. And it is required by the Polish officials that it has the exact place and not just the county. Also, it has the names and surnames of your parents and the maiden surname of mother, which is also required. The second part would be naturalization documents, so adopting other country citizenship. Here we have the example of petition for naturalization from United States. This kind of document is issued by the USCS, so United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. We are also good with certificate of naturalization, which is kept by the National Archives or also USCS. Let me zoom to that. We have a photo, we have a name, surname. They are blacked out because of privacy concerns, of course. From the UK, definitely check National Archives located in Kew. So this is how it looks. The older forms are also available. Please be aware that British Certificate of Naturalization provides the occupation of your ancestor. So you can, if the occupation that he or she has is in line with the public office issue that I mentioned earlier, we would have to check that as well, if the naturalization states that he or she is a doctor or teacher. And finally, proof of no naturalization, because it also happened. Polish people sometimes did not wish to adopt the citizenship of the country they resided in, they found themselves living in. Again, not affidavit, not statement, but hard copy letter that came with an envelope and stamp or signature. Here is the example from the UK, from the National Archives. You can see that the archive formally states that they checked records regarding the father, date of birth, and so and so. And they checked the catalog, they did not find it. And therefore, we must assume that he was not naturalized as a British citizen. So this is a proof that naturalization did not happen, and the provincial office cannot pick on that. Moving on, military records. So basically, we do not prove that service happened, but in different years. Most of the times, we just prove that military service did not happen at all. So it also comes in form of a hard copy letter, in this case from National Archives in the US. They check the veteran's name under Social Security number, of course. I believe you do not have to know the Social Security number. The name should suffice for their searches, but please check that with the National Archive as well. So the main goal here is proving that your ancestor did not serve in any army outside of Poland before 1951. This is the letter. And regarding the Allied service, as you might remember, the Allied service is exempt from that rule. Here we have the document proving that the ancestor served in the Polish Corps under British command. And not only it is a great proof that it was the Allied service, but also in that case, it would be a proof of Polish citizenship, because this is definitely Polish unit under Polish officers with Polish-speaking people and so on, under British High Command, but a Polish, I would say, sub-unit of the army, definitely. So this kind of document can also prove the fact that your ancestor was Polish. If you have more of the documents like that from the Second Polish Corps or in general Polish forces under British command, definitely please contact us, because this is, I would say, one of the best proofs that the ancestor was Polish. So that's that with collecting non-Polish documents. Then we moved finally to placing the application. So placing the application happens mostly to Mazovian Provincial Office in Warsaw. It is because of the locality. So if you are based outside of Poland, this is the office that would review all your motions. If you are presently living in Poland but do not have Polish citizenship, let's say you are living in Wrocław, then your application would be reviewed by Dolnośląski Urząd Wojewódzki, so provincial office in Lower Silesia. So the application is a filled-in form, which we take care of, or other professionals, with the personal details about you, about your ancestry, and also we are attaching the documents and sworn translations to Polish of that documents as a proofs. So we also simultaneously register your birth and marriage if you are married in Poland with the registry office, and please keep in mind that the documents used for those registrations, for birth and marriage registrations, are the only ones that are not returned, because the registry office wants to keep those as a basis of the Polish documents that they already issued, so they would not be definitely returned. And then we have to wait. So the government is reviewing the application. The process takes a minimum of 2 months because this is the law, what law states that it should take 2 months. Currently, it's closer to 6 months, unfortunately, because as you probably all aware, in most countries in the world, governments move slowly, and if they have a deadline, they can always send you a letter that they are extending this deadline, and it's similar in Poland. If they want to request more files from us, if they want to double check our facts, our documents, or even send queries of their own to the archives, to the consulates, to the institutions that could have some, I don't want to sound bad here, but some dirt on the ancestors, they would do that. So, but that's not the general rule. I'm just stating that it sometimes happens. So the process can take from 2 to 6 months, basically. And after that's completed, you are issued with Polish citizenship certificate. The beauty of it is they are not granting you the citizenship, but the Polish official is confirming that you have been a citizen from the moment of your birth. It basically states that so-and-so, son or daughter of so-and-so, born on that and that, is a Polish citizen from the moment of birth. Because this is the procedure, the Polish citizenship by descent. You inherited the citizenship, we know it, you know it, the Polish government has to know it by reviewing the application and issuing you the formal document. With that document, you cannot be stopped from getting the Polish passport. So having the Polish citizenship certificate along with your registered Polish birth and marriage certificates are the basis for issuing you the passport. There are also several forms like PESEL and passport forms, but those are filled by the professionals, by your representatives. They are quite complicated. They require a lot of data, obviously. You could do it on your own, of course, but most of the firms, and we too, deal with those by filling them in, and you just have to sign those. And those are exchangeable for the Polish passport. You have to schedule the appointment in most of the places. If the consulate is not busy with work, they might be able to take you, let's say, from the street without booking the appointment. But for London especially, please book the appointment, because that's important to have a date scheduled. And you bring the documents. You have to verify that you is you, so you show your current passport, British, Canadian, Australian, or so on. You need to leave your fingerprint, because the passport is biometric one, as are all in the European Union. You need to pay the fee, because the fee is not deducted from the fee you paid the professional from. The consulate requires you personally to pay the fee. That is why it is not included. And it is generally under $100 or £100. to be paid at the consulate. You can choose the consulate where you go to on your own. It doesn't have to be the closest to your regular place of living. If you are, let's say, having a long trip, long vacation somewhere in Spain or Italy, you can book the appointment in the Polish embassy in Rome or in Madrid. Please just remember you have to collect documents in the same institution, consulate or embassy that you have placed your motion in. And the waiting time is about 4 to 5 weeks. So you have to be basically in the same place after 4 to 5 weeks to collect the passport. Polish passport is valid for 10 years, and it doesn't mean that you are only citizen for 10 years. Obviously, you are a citizen until you choose to renounce citizenship, but the passport is issued for that period of time and can be extended, of course. It has all the powers of European passport. So there is not such thing as European passport physically, but each and every one passport of each and every one member states is European passport. So Polish passport equals European passport, the same way as German passports equal European passports, and so on. So moving on to the most important piece, saved for last, the benefits. So why would you do this? Why would you be interested in the whole procedure or having it conducted? So with the European citizenship, you have a lot of privileges. For example, you would be able to reside, work, and learn in the European Union without any further paperwork, of course. So the passport that you have is the basis saying that you are a European citizen and you are entitled to that. For example, you can study at Sorbonne in France. Many universities provide free education free higher education for European citizens. Many of international firms based in Europe or having their headquarters in Europe would require for the registration of your residence. If you have this passport, they are very happy with it because it puts a lot of work from their shoulders, and they just state, look, this person is European citizen. There is nothing that we should report or register in terms of having her or him at our company. Moreover, you will be able to travel freely within Schengen area, and Schengen area covers most of European Union. There are some notable exceptions, like I believe Denmark, which still requires some customs or any other checks. But apart from that, I think that 90%, or I would have to check, but most of European Union has the Schengen area, and you could move freely through almost all Europe with no checks and no visas and so on and so on. And lastly, related to the previous point, spend less time in queues. At the airport, you probably saw already that there are separate queues for European citizens and non-European citizens. So the European line moves a lot quicker because there are no customs and so on and so on. It might be a small privilege, but definitely handy one. So really anything you could imagine with your European stay, with your European future, if you plan such a thing, either for you or for your children or for your grandchildren, what you imagine is probably within the reach with these European privileges. So yeah, about that. And of course, please do not forget to contact us. Here are our contact details. First of all, our email address, then phone address. We are also available on Skype, and please definitely check our website. As Kinga mentioned already, we are not only dealing with citizenship, but also with genealogy. So if you are interested in both services, we are here for you. If you are interested in only one of those, we are also here for you. So if you want to explore sentimental journey to the past, to discovering your roots, your Polish roots, we are here for you. We have a lot of experience. If you want to build a citizenship case in this at the same time, it can be done simultaneously. So we are, as I mentioned, we are here for you. Please also remember to check our Facebook group, which is dedicated to Polish citizenship and passport. It has a lot of interesting questions and answers. We have put forward free guides for you to check with the examples of the documents that are required by the government, with the description of the processes. And there will be more, because we just started with the group on Facebook. It's still growing, and we are hoping it will be a major hub for all people that are interested in Polish citizenship, and of course European citizenship in that matter, and to connect all people, and we can have a lovely talk about your Polish ancestry, Polish family histories, Polish heritage and culture. So please feel welcomed in the group. Here are the links, so link to our group. And also we are starting with our free Polish citizenship quiz on the website. So you can go to our website and move from there to our survey, or you can use the link here, which I believe also Kinga will post in the chat. And with both of those links, you can benefit, because as I mentioned, the benefits of being in the group, and also with the quiz, the answers that you provide, or if you don't know something, that's fine, you just check, I don't know. We will get back to you by email or by phone, whatever it is suitable for you, and discuss your case, and you will have personalized, free, I repeat, free analysis and eligibility check, that you will be sure whether you can apply or not. I think that the knowledge passed today is quite a lot. I try to be as detailed as possible, so you can repeat the recording that will also appear on our YouTube channel. But if you just want to get over with it and not think too much about it, and just provide us the facts and get the analysis from us, that's more than, we are more than happy to provide that to you. So that would be all from my side with the presentation. So I will just turn off screen sharing, and we welcome you to post any questions related to citizenship. I believe it will take some time to collate. Oh, we have the first question. Both sets of grandparents and my mother were all born in Poland prior to 1936. Does it make it much easier for me? Okay, so emigration in 36, so sometime already passed with the history of Second Polish Republic, so 16 years. And there is a good chance that documents were issued already for your family, because if the family emigrated in early 20s, it would mean that not much documents could be made for them, basically. So 16 years is a good time for them to appear in population censuses, or there could be passport indexes, or even passport themselves in the state archives that could be explored. So having those kinds of documents retrieved from the archives would be a great proof of citizenship. So definitely, I think it is worth exploring. And I see both sets of grandparents, so even more ancestors to check, right? So, so yeah, definitely, please contact us to our mailbox or any other method you prefer, and we'll be more than happy to provide you with the options available. Okay, many people are asking similar things. If grandparents immigrated and naturalized, this is pretty much ends entire possibility, even if great-grandparents were Polish citizens. Okay, so starting from the very end, it is true that citizenship has to pass through all the generations. It's very important. So the great-grandparents were Polish citizens. It has to pass to grandparents, or grandfather, grandmother, not both of them. Then father or mother, then to you. So if the loss of citizenship happens with grandparents, parents, or you, the lineage is broken. That is true, even if the great-grandparents were Polish. So it has to pass without any disturbance to you. So starting from that, but naturalization doesn't always mean loss of citizenship. Because in male lineages, if men were able to join Polish army, the Polish state did not see any circumstance under which they could lose citizenship by naturalization. They still wanted them in the army, even in theory. But let's say your grandfather naturalized in 1936, let's say, but it happened before 1951, so it would still mean that he could lose citizenship, but he didn't, because he was eligible to be drafted into Polish army. So it's definitely still worth checking, because having dual citizenship back then not always meant that the Polish one was lost forever. So also I invite you to contact us by email, provide us with dates and so on, because each case is different. We have to analyze it, we have to do some maths and check that. If my grandparents never went back to Poland, can I be certain that they did not renounce their citizenship? Okay, so we can assume that in most cases, the renunciation did not happen because it is in the nature of people. I know it sounds ridiculous, but please imagine that you immigrated, you have adopted American or Canadian or other citizenship, but you do not want to go to trouble to go to the Polish officials and say, okay, I'm American now, I do not want to be Polish anymore. The renunciations mostly happen in certain political conditions, mostly after Second World War, because when people were dual nationals, so let's say British and Polish, and they visited Poland, communist Poland, they were afraid that the Polish authorities will arrest them, even though they are British, because they are also Polish. So renunciations mostly happen in that conditions during communist era. 90%, or I even would say 95% of renunciations, there are still not much of them, not many of them. But most of them, if they happened in these particular conditions, that they were afraid of being arrested, and so they were to visit Poland in about 2 weeks. So they went to the consul and renounced citizenship. Renunciation had to happen before consul or Polish authorities. If it happened before American, because I know naturalization, going back to naturalization, the naturalization form states that I so-and-so renounce any previous allegiances, but it didn't happen before Polish authorities. And that's what's important. So yeah, that's that. What about certified by the Polish consul office, birth baptist documents? Okay, so the certification is fine, done by the Polish official, just as I said. Regarding the church documents, they are accepted up to 1946, 1 year after the war ended. Because starting from 1946, there are no longer church and state records, but they were divided. So church records after 1946 are no longer good for use for official purposes, because starting from 1946, we also see state documents. Before that, that's fine, because church documents were state documents. Okay, we are waiting. Yeah. If family came over in 1890s, is citizenship possible? Census showed they spoke Polish, and I have passenger records from Gdańsk. Right, so this would be, quite frankly, one of the hardest cases, because the emigration happened before first citizenship law. The first citizenship law being introduced in 1920. So the people already left when the citizenship was introduced for inhabitants of the Polish lands. So we have to prove that they reported somehow to Polish authorities, even abroad, living abroad, that they want to be Polish citizens. And regarding the census, I believe you are discussing the American census and the passenger records. This would fall under the category of non-Polish documents. And non-Polish documents are not proof of Polish citizenship. They are useful as supporting evidence. They are useful as to proving the naturalization and so on, the things we discussed. But the proof of having Polish citizenship has to come from Polish sources. So we would need birth, marriage records from Poland. We would need census from Poland, even if it predates the first citizenship law. And we would also need some evidence that they reported abroad and wanted to be citizens. I have the original of his British alias registration card and British travel document. He never took British citizenship. His travel document was valid for every country in the world except Poland, because he remained a Polish citizen all his life. Yeah, so this is very similar to previous question in that matter, that having non-Polish documents stating someone was Polish, sadly, is not accepted by Polish authorities as proof of Polish citizenship, because the Polish government cannot be sure. This is what they are stating. I'm just repeating it. They cannot be sure on what basis in that case, British official stated someone was Polish. They did not have a legal basis for that, basically. So this would still fall under the category of supporting evidence and cannot be main evidence. But the information from the documents you have can be used to trace Polish documents during the query in Polish archives. And moreover, if there is a chance of Polish-British joint citizenship, it is always worth to check the Polish core documents, I mean Polish military documents held by the British Ministry of Defense, because a lot of Polish people that stayed in the UK after the war were part of Polish military under British command, and that would be good proof. Okay, so can you clarify citizenship by descent if one grandparents were the immigrants and one parents were born in the USA? All my grandparents were born in what is today Poland, but they immigrated to the USA before First World War. They all obtained US citizenship. My grandfathers never served in the army, and one grandmother derived US citizenship through her father as she was a child. Okay, I have a Polish certified copy of her birth certificate. I'm not sure if I qualify. My father, her son, who was born in the US, served in the Second World War in the US Army. Okay, so first of all, we would have to check, starting again from the very end, we will have to check your eligibility, because service in the US Army in Second World War is fine, because the goal was common, to defeat Axis powers. But you are also stating that he had civil service jobs in the US, so these kind of jobs would have to be verified, and also when he ended his service in the US Army and whether there were interruptions. There are a lot of details to go through with that, so I also invite you to contact us because we have to check the service dates and so on with very personalized analysis of your case. And regarding the mixed heritage, I think that you are trying to say, if citizenship is passed from one branch of family, it's fine. It doesn't have to be all branches of the family being Polish. If I misunderstood you, please also feel free to put that in the email, and I would provide better answer. What role does DNA proof play? Sadly, the quick answer is none, because the Polish government does not accept DNA evidence in this sort of procedure. But it is a very useful tool for genealogy searches. So having your DNA tested in that matter for genealogical purposes could bring some answers, could bring some traces that would lead us to the Polish archives and check for documentary evidence, which is the best to be used for the procedure. Okay, can you talk about Polish Jews in displaced person camps? Born in displaced person camps, is Barroson cards enough to establish citizenship? Okay, so this is something, thank you very much for bringing it up. The Bad Arolsen files, I mean International Tracing Services cards that are being held by the archive in Bad Arolsen, Germany, have a lot of very useful information for us, for both genealogists and citizenship specialists, because they contain a lot, and I mean a lot of data, personal details about ancestors. They are available online, even if there are some records that are not available online. You can query the Bad Arolsen archive, ask for your ancestor, and they will go through all the files to check whether the ancestor appears there, and that is very useful. But again, sadly, the answer is still that non-Polish documents and the Bad Arolsen cards were issued by United Nations administration and sometimes also occupation forces, so American, British, French forces and Soviet forces in the Germany. So this would still fall under the category of documents not being issued by Polish authority, but being very good supporting evidence. For example, I had a number of cases in which we had a problem to prove the name change of the ancestor, and the Bad Arolsen files come in very handy because they listed both surnames, and the provincial office accepted it as evidence, or also marriage certificate of grandparents. It was not found in German registry, but Bad Arolsen had it. So, of course, a lot of Polish Jews have their data stored in Bad Arolsen files because they cover not only the displaced persons after the war, but also persecution by Nazi Germany, and being in the camp, being in the ghetto, being arrested, and anything like that. They have it all, and also Red Cross concerning finding ancestors after, finding family after the war. Okay, if my father died in Poland and I was born in Poland, how can I apply for Polish citizenship while living abroad? So living abroad is not any obstacle here. This is the beauty of it, and you also do not have to speak Polish. So it can be done from the place that you live with the help of Polish professional like ourselves. So it also, I'm also sorry for your loss, but in case of Polish citizenship by descent, the government does not treat your father being deceased as an obstacle, because you are Polish citizen from the moment of your birth. So even if your father is no longer with us, you inherited this citizenship. And this is the basis of all the procedures. So Polish ancestors from a while ago, from early 20th century and so on, they are no longer with us. They are deceased, but the citizenship was passed. They were abroad, of course, but Poland has rule of blood and not rule of land. So you do not have to be born in Poland to inherit Polish citizenship. You inherit it from your parents. Okay, if my father naturalized in the US in 1954, his daughter, would not be eligible. No, that's fortunately that's not correct, because the naturalization happened after 51, 3 years after that. So Polish law was updated in 1951, and your father 3 years later naturalized, and it's absolutely fine because no longer there was a penalty for doing that. Spoke about Korean War and Israeli War of Independence as wars in which Poland at the time was aligned with opposing side to the West. But what if, for example, someone previously serving in the Royal Air Force then joined Pakistani Air Force, okay, of 47, the war in which Polish government remained neutral? Sadly, I'm pretty sure that the citizenship was lost yes, I was speaking about opposing sides, but also not having common goal. And after 45, there were not many wars, I think almost virtually none, in which Polish army and other armies had a common goal. And in that case, it would be treated as service in the non-Polish army. It still happened before 1951 when the law was updated. So we are still talking about 1920 law. And that would mean that your ancestor sadly lost Polish citizenship in 47 when he joined the Air Force fighting the Indo-Pakistani War. Both my grandfathers were born in New York, but one of my great-grandmother was a Polish citizen. Also, my grandmothers left what is today Belarus in the years 1920 and 21, when the area was part of Poland. Okay, so again, that would be sadly a very hard case. It's not impossible, but the emigration is pretty early on. So 1920, if you remember, perhaps from the presentation, was the year that Poland adopted citizenship law, and your great-grandmother left almost immediately after that. So there is a little space for us, for the government to issue her any documents, and thus for us finding those documents. And moreover, citizenship documents for Belarus are still being held in Belarusian archives. Some of the records concerning birth and marriages were transferred to Poland, but citizenship records remained in Belarus or Ukraine and so on. So it would require an inquiry in Belarusian archives. It can be done, so please do not worry about that, but just to give you a heads up. And yeah, I would still need some dates as to when she was born and so on and so on. So please make sure to write to us, and we will check your eligibility, and we would propose whether there are some actions to be taken with Belarusian archives. Sorry, little sip. My grandfather was born in Poland. My father was born in Austria in 47. Due to the change in Polish lines, as I understand, am I still eligible? My brother and I have certified copy of grandfather's birth certificate and my father's birth certificate. Okay, so again, it doesn't really matter your father was born in Austria, because citizenship is passed from parents to children, regardless of the place that they were born in. So it's different than in the US, because US has the rule of land. So being born on American soil grants you citizenship. In Poland, it's entirely different. So being born outside of Polish territory, you can still be Polish citizen because it is passed from parents to children in blood relationship. That is why it is called rule of blood, jus sanguinis in Latin, opposing to jus soli in the US and other countries that follow it. So yeah, I would say there is a very good chance you are still eligible. Having the birth certificate alone because of the matter that I just spoke about is not enough, because you could be born in Poland and not be her citizen, but it is possible to find other records such as population census that lists your family in Poland. Then we just trace your lineage from that people that were listed in the population census to you, and that's that. Another sip. Does Poland allow for dual citizenship, or must one denounce current citizenship in order to become a Polish citizen? Very good question. Thank you for that, Cindy. So most of the countries, and Poland as well, allow dual citizenship. So if you come from the US, UK, Canada, Australia, I could go on, you are entitled for dual citizenship. There are literally several countries that do not allow dual citizenship, and they are also in Europe. So having Polish citizenship basically fits the purpose of having European passports. So this is matter of choosing, right? So Austria and Germany, I believe, do not allow dual citizenship, but just let us know from which country you are. I will be able to provide you with 100% sure answer. but I can say with good chance that dual citizenship is permitted in your country, and it is definitely permitted in Poland. I need to rehydrate myself, I'm sorry. If my Polish mother emigrated to the US and was naturalized before 1950, but I was born before she naturalized, am I still eligible to obtain citizenship through her? Okay, that is quite a pickle, right? You were born before she naturalized. As a minor, you were still dependent on her citizenship. You did not, well, you had citizenship of your own that you were granted with from the moment of your birth, but as long as you depended on one of your parents with that citizenship, if the parent lost it, then sadly you lost it too. The same goes with the renunciation. So minors citizenship is dependent on their guardians, their parents' citizenship. So please make sure to write to us. Perhaps there is some loophole we can think of, but that is the general rule. What about gravestones from grandparents from before 1920? Would there be some Polish records of that gravestone that would qualify you? Okay, so first of all, there are a number of databases online that allow the checking of the grave, of the information that can be used in further searches. I just wanted to open with that. The physical proof here would not really qualify, I would say. We still need documentary evidence from the archives or your family archives. And also, if it's from before 1920, it also predates the first citizenship law that introduced citizenship in Poland. Okay, next question. I went to Poland in August and found out that I still have relatives living here. Congratulations. Will this make my process of applying for a passport easier with living relatives still living in Poland? So generally, the application is only about you and your ancestors. Not the other branches of the family, so not the uncle, not the aunt, not the brother or sister. It is about you and your ancestor. Of course, your siblings or your extended family can apply, but they would be applying in their own name. You can share common documentation if you have common ancestor, of course, but that's the general rule. It's about you and your ancestors. So I believe your family can be helpful in such manner that they might have some old documents. It's worth checking the attic or any other place that they would keep the documents. So I would definitely ask them about the common ancestors and what they know, the dates, the places, and so on. If they have any documents, they could be a real help here. And with that, armed with that evidence, you can definitely pursue the citizenship. If my Polish line runs through paternal grandfather who came to UK during Second World War, can I claim citizenship? I would have to know the date of birth of your grandfather and whether he naturalized or served in any non-Polish army to be sure, but with a good amount of certainty, I would say that he most likely qualifies, and well, you qualify through him. And also, as I mentioned, if that's the family history here, it's definitely worth checking the Ministry of Defense files concerning Polish corps. So Polish army under British command, because there is a very good chance that he was a part of that. And being a soldier in Polish army equals being a citizen. Okay, I already have a next question. If we are not eligible due to naturalization of ancestors, are there any other options for getting Polish citizenship? Yes, there are 3 methods of obtaining Polish citizenship. The one that we are discussing here in most detail is the Polish citizenship by descent. So only having your ancestors and making sure the citizenship was not lost. And other methods are presidential grant. So you apply to the president of Poland proving not really your past connections, so not that grandmother or grandfather, but you can do that, but the emphasis is on your current connection to Poland. So you have to prove that you have strong connection to Polish culture, heritage. So generally, I said that affidavits and statements are not that popular with Polish government, but in that case, they would be good to go. So a letter from Polish community or a letter from NGOs working for the Polish community, stating that you are in fact having a great relationship with Polish community, doing great works for Polish culture. This is the main evidence when it comes to presidential grant. And lastly, there is a residence option, so you can just move to Poland, live here for a couple of years, I believe 4 years, knowing the language and passing the Polish language exam, state exam. So passing this exam and having the residency of 4 years would grant you the citizenship by residency. Okay, next question. If one finds a record of your ancestors on an ancestry site, such as JRI Poland or Polish census, would that be sufficient proof for obtaining Polish citizenship? This is a very good trace, so it's definitely worth exploring because those are indexing sites. JRI stands for Jewish Records Indexing. So having an index, someone went to state archives, went through the fonts, through the material at the archive and indexed it. So having that is great. You just have to follow up with writing or contacting archive in any other manner, providing them with the numbers from the index. So there are always numbers with the index. So the number of act, the year, and so on, signature. They are able to issue you a hard copy document on the basis of which the index was made. And that would be your evidence, if it's population census, of course. That would be your evidence and definitely worth exploring. If you would like our help, please feel free to contact us. Regardless, please follow up on this. Okay, does a birth certificate issued in Lviv before the First World War entitles me to apply? Again, very good trace. The birth certificate is not a proof of Polish citizenship based on what I said earlier. And so the rule of blood and rule of land. Rule of land is the rule that would grant you citizenship based on birth on the territory of the country, which is currently in USA and so on. And the rule of blood, which is the rule that always was binding in Poland and still is, mentions that means that you have citizenship inherited from your parents and not based on your birth in the country. So good trail, we would need to find other records, other type of records from Lviv, stating that your family lived there and had citizenship. Okay, next question. My grandfather was born in 1889 and emigrated with his mother to US at age 14. He joined US Army, First World War. On the US census, it states that he was officially born in Germany, but he was not really German. Yeah, of course, I will get back to that. It's true. His mother, also Polish. Will these facts be taken into consideration? Okay, so Poland ceased to exist end of 18th century, and it did not exist for next 123 years, a lot of time. It only reappeared on the maps of Europe in 1918, sorry. So it is no wonder that in the census your family appears as German, because they probably lived in the part of Poland that was under German rule, because Poland was partitioned into 3 powers, so Germany in the west, Austria in the south, and Russia in the east. and your family probably originated from the lands that were held by the German Empire. The fact that your ancestor served in the First World War is not of an issue here, because citizenship law was introduced in 1920, so 2 years after this war ended. Before that, there was no Polish citizenship, there was no Polish state even, because it was reintroduced to the world stage after the First World War. So it will fall under the category of your family already being abroad when the citizenship was introduced. So we would need some proof that they have reported to the authorities for their citizenship, but the fact that you have written, so the German nationality or being in the army, are not of an issue here. Sorry about little breaks, but my mouth is feeling dry. Okay, both my maternal grandparents were born in Poland, married in Soranowica in 1907. My grandfather's passport was in. Both my parents were born in Chicago. My grandfather immigrated from Poland in 1907. His passport was in Cyrillic Russian. Okay, so he had Russian passport, and this is very tight with the previous question. So your family originated in turn from the territory that was under Russian Empire rule. So he was stated to be Russian citizen. It is no fault of his, because there was no Polish state back then. He would have to wait 11 more years to be considered Polish and 13 years to be considered Polish citizen. Yes, and that's because of the occupation. Okay, so are we done with the questions? Yeah, thank you very much, Mark, for your compliment. Oh, yeah, we have Kinga here.
Hi, hello. Thank you very much, Michał, for all your hard work on this lecture. I can see that we still have many questions, and thank you very much for your participation today. I know there are still some topics that you would like to raise, that you would like to be answered, and I got a great news for you, because we can save this chat. We will save this chat. With every question that there is your email associated, so we will simply answer to all of these questions, because we would need to really stay much longer to answer all of these questions. During that webinar, several times Michał told you that you can write an email to us on citizenship@yourrootsinpoland.com with the details, because as it was mentioned before, every case is different, every family history is different, so that's why it needs and it requires a very detailed and very specific individual approach. Yeah, so we will be very happy to help you with every case. We will answer all of the questions. We invite you to our Polish genealogy helper group, to our Polish passport and citizenship group as well. Hope you got, and I'm sure that you got a lot of very useful information from that lecture. So thank you, Michał, very much again. And we will do more webinars like this one in the future. So, and we will definitely inform you about that. Have a great rest of your day, of your evening. Dobranoc, dziękujemy.
Thank you very much.